listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God.
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I am your host, William, and with me today will be Sean.
Hello.
And that'll be it because Derek is not able to join us. I think he had to work some mandatory overtime this weekend. And Julie will not be with us either because she didn't get a chance to watch the movie. But we're discussing Trick or Treat.
Finally, I can't believe we didn't cover this before.
I think we started to and then didn't and did something else because of timing.
Yeah, and two, I think this one we probably bailed on it several times, or we probably discussed it, but there was this is a must-do movie in October.
Yeah.
So that's probably why we didn't do it throughout any other years, because we've done this podcast, probably maybe 2 Octobers now?
Yeah, we started in early spring of 2014.
Yeah.
So we did October of 2014, 15, and 16.
Okay.
Because this is episode 1 something. So it's almost been 3 years or...
Yeah. Yep, so...
Yeah, it's been a while.
I mean, this is a good one to do. I'm surprised we had this strong of a Halloween, somewhat recent release that we have not covered yet.
Yeah, so before we get to Trick or Treat, we will go through recent news and things we've been watching. And on the news, there's a lot of retread news, and there's also some news out there that there's a lot of bad horror fans because people are discussing Cult of Chucky and the new Texas Chainsaw movie before they've been released through legal channels because people have been pirating them. Because I've seen a number of people talking about the new Cult of Chucky, which comes out on DVD and Blu-ray and digital release. And at the end of the month, it's going to hit Netflix and be on AMC's Fear Fest or Monster Week or... Is it Fear Fest? Yeah, it's Fear Fest.
Yeah, which is super cool that it's going to be on both. I didn't know it was coming to Netflix also. I knew the Fear Fest stuff. That's really awesome. I mean...
Well, it's awesome that it's going to be available all those legal ways. It's not awesome that people couldn't wait to do it in a way
that's the thing. They didn't have to buy the disc. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's 2 different channels where if they already have cable or Netflix, but it's a weird thing with distribution now where it's essentially we get new movies for free. You know, something like this. It's not like a big theatrical release that's huge, but the fact that a new Cult of Chucky that's supposed to be pretty good. I don't know. What were some of the reviews? Do you know?
I haven't paid attention to those people because I haven't really necessarily. I didn't see the last one, The Curse of Chucky. All the reviews have said that franchise is back on track and is good again. Because I'd seen the original Child's Play films, and then I saw I know there was the Jennifer Tilly one, Bride of Chucky, and then Seed of Chucky. I think I watched part of, and I was like, eh. And then Curse of Chucky's supposed to be good, and Cult of Chucky's supposed to be good. So I haven't really watched that franchise. I need to see if there's a way to catch up on that, to watch this new one when it comes out on all these various platforms. But it's disheartening, even, the Texas Chainsaw movie. We've discussed back and forth if we'll cover that or not, because it doesn't look great or super interesting. But it is very disheartening to see that, there's fans out there pirating stuff and then brazenly talking about it who are big fans in the community, and it's if you want movies to keep getting made, you gotta pay to watch them. And
even if you're not paying for it, you think, it's gonna be, I could watch it for free anyway when it comes to Netflix, but even still, those streaming numbers or the viewership numbers matter as well. You know what I mean? If there's hardly nobody watching it on AMC and streaming it on Netflix because they've already watched it, then next time around, Netflix isn't going to invest in getting a movie like this put out for free. And they may not be able to make it. Maybe the Cult of Chucky deal was they could have signed that Netflix and AMC deal before they made the film to get funding for it. That's what they did for, Lucky Logan, the Steven Soderbergh film.
Yeah, they pre-signed a lot of distribution deals.
Yeah, they pre-sold all those to basically be able to just make the film or to pay for the marketing or whatever. So they did that just to get the ball rolling to be able to produce something. So don't think just because something's made that, this is just bonus cash for them. It's always a financial risk making films.
And even so Netflix doesn't share their view or download numbers with the general public, but they internally look at those numbers and that could decide whether or not they fund a film or want to be a part of distribution strategy for a film. Because obviously something like Stranger Things is going to be huge, and they know that's going to be huge, and they can plan out multiple seasons of it. But, some of these smaller projects, if, they invest a little bit of money here, a few $1 million here or there, and they don't take off, then they just take that off the docket for upcoming projects to make sequels or something similar to that.
And then you'll get Fuller House season 5 and 6 instead of a new Chucky film.
Yeah, so the bottom line is there, if you want to watch movies, pay for them.
Or watch them on the services if they're available, legally.
Yeah, like watch in a legal way that goes towards the tracking. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of I'll download the copy of it, and then if I like it, I'll buy it. Well, I would guess the follow-through rate of people who say they'll buy it if they like it is pretty low. And that's just kind of like a hollow excuse that's used to kind of justify and hand-wave away the behavior. And, over the course of my lifetime, when I was in college, I had pirated some films. But then I realized, even though it was some stuff that was, at the time, really hard to get, and you couldn't really purchase legally anyway, that didn't justify it. So then eventually I did go and buy all those things. And a lot of those movies I bought multiple iterations and versions of.
Or you just get educated. You get educated, too, on, the impact it has. Because, I did, too, because, Napster and all that stuff hit when we were in middle school. And it's you start on that, and at the time there was controversy, but as a kid, you're and everybody just thought it was no big deal. There wasn't any education on the impact it has on any industry. And then you roll into to be able to torrent movies, and it's it's just a natural thing, and some software and Adobe, you know what I mean? You do all those things, but then eventually you learn hey, I've got some money, and this hurts these things that I actually like. So
well, I mean, the big Marvel movies, those will continue to get made because they will make their money at the theaters and internationally. Not saying you should pirate those. It's just a lot of those big, super successful franchises will probably continue. Mm-hmm. But if there's certain entries that are duds, then that really puts the future. How many times have they rebooted Terminator? Because James Cameron's going to be involved in a new Terminator. And that franchise has been rebooted how many times now? But I think it's mostly just because they know that franchise has the capacity to be super successful. They just keep, getting it just close enough to profitability that they keep wanting to make more of them. Yeah. But, something like the Cult of Chucky or Texas Chainsaw movie or a lot of these, more fringe franchises, if they don't do well, look at Friday the 13th. It made decent money when it came out in 2009, but not decent enough money that they were able to get anything in theaters and push forward and get something out. So, and so that's big, movies that have millions of dollars of budget. When you come to independent projects, where they have a ultimate, at the end of the day, to get disc to your door and everything, it's a $20,000 budget. When those get pirated, most of those people are in the black to begin with, or not in the black because that's profit. They're in the red, so they're in debt to get these movies made. And then when they see, I put $4,000 on my credit card, and I look on a torrent site and I see that 10,000 people have downloaded my movie. If 10,000 people had bought the movie, they would be, profitable and be able to put up more money in the sequel. So especially on independent projects, it's worth your, time and money, even if it doesn't turn out to be something you like. It's better at least to rent it.
Yeah, just
to the
rent
services
it. Yeah.
Because a lot of stuff like She Was So Pretty. So Brooklyn Ewing's film. She was at the Days of the Dead was an independent filmmakers panel I took a part of. The year before, she was in a panel. And it talked about how when the movie came out, they saw it on torrent sites and saw how many downloads it had. And then PJ Starks from the Volumes of Blood franchise was at the filmmakers panel this year and talked about how they saw that the first movie had been downloaded 12,000 times. And then you just have to sit and think, if half of those were rentals or purchases, then there's money in people's pockets involved with creating those movies.
And they could have made the sequel, they both made sequels to those films. Yeah. They could have put even more money in those and not necessarily saying money equals quality, but when you're working on a micro budget level or a lower budget level, you can see a difference on screen because if every single dollar really counts when you're, when you are spending every dollar of your own or investors that aren't studios or something like that where they're, it's not a difference between $100 million project and $150 million. It's, 20,000 versus, 50,000 possibly.
Well, and two, another thing to take into account, a lot of those indie projects, most people aren't getting paid. Yeah. Most people are doing things for free. Crew, cast, all that. There, some people that are, that have bigger names or resumes or credentials, they'll pay for them to fly out and stay or pay them a little bit. But it's not much. But a lot of these indie projects, even if the quality of the things on screen doesn't dramatically improve the extra 10,000, that's likely more money being spent on food and the crew and cast. so that people are getting a little bit of reward for the, hours they spend on things. So that's just, with piracy, I get the temptation to do it, and then like the kind of hand wavy excuses you can tell people or yourself. But at the end of the day, renting something on Vimeo, like I said, she was the point I brought that was, you can rent it from Vimeo for 99 cents. So what's the possible excuse to not just pay the 99 cents to rent it versus, torrenting it and watching it? And a lot of stuff you can rent for $4.99 or $3.99 through different rental services. So there's not a lot of excuse to steal things. Because if you can afford a high-speed internet connection to do it, you can probably afford $3 or $4 here.
Yeah, I mean, normally it's like the cost of a value meal at McDonald's.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, that's the way I always look at it. I used to actually, even when I was in college, sometimes I'd be like, all right, I'm just not gonna, I'm gonna choose not to like eat out a couple days and then buy this Blu-ray instead. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I would always do. Like, this is essentially equating to eating 2 value meals to get a Blu-ray, and I would do that, or and
too, like there's Netflix alone and Redbox and things like that don't always make the movies money. A lot of times they are kind of a drop in the bucket for those, and a lot of times going on Netflix gains a movie's exposure and makes it be seen by more people, but then kind of kills the prospect of being able to sell DVD and Blu-ray copies of it while it's on that service. But those are still trackable metrics that they can use. Netflix can see that this project has this level of interest, so maybe they'll be more inclined to offer a little bit of money to somebody for their next project.
Or if it's something like Amazon Prime Video or whatever, if the creators can see how many views they got, they can pitch that to potential investors in the future, saying, hey, look, we had this many views. If we're doing a sequel, we expect to have, a similar return. It's worth investing on it, for this part or whatever. Also, too, before I forget, Volumes of Blood 2, so that just came out recently.
Yeah.
If you have Vudu, which is like a free streaming service where you can rent movies and stuff, they also have a free section that is ad supported. Volumes of Blood 2 is on there to watch for free, legally, and there'll be like a couple commercial breaks. It's nothing like it's not even nothing like Hulu commercial breaks or Crackle at all.
Yeah,
it's like very infrequently. And then I think you can buy the movie on Vudu for like $5.
Yeah,
also.
You can rent it on all the major VOD platforms. And 2, just to be full exposure or full disclosure, we have no stake in that at all. Like, there's no money going from us or to us.
Yeah,
from that project.
I directed one of the segments, but financially,
it's just pointing out that you can legally watch that. The first one is on Amazon Prime. The first Volumes of Blood.
And I recommend watching that one first before this one because there are parts that could be a little
interconnected
confusing.
Parts. Like there's, and then at that panel there's also Brian Dorton talked about Crazy Fat Ethel, and some others. I don't think one guy, Bobby Easley. They had some current projects. I don't remember what they were. I think some of the other people had stuff that wasn't really new. They're talking about, but you can go watch that panel just to see all that. But the bottom line was just if you can watch indie horror or indie film in general, that is where the dollars do matter and the metrics do matter because we have all of our stuff's on YouTube, all of our short films that we're not selling anything. So for us, just the views are what matters and the feedback and exposure to hopefully when we build to do a feature, we can point to people. It's like, okay, well these got these level of engagement. And this is what it looks like, and this is what we accomplished with this amount of money. So, and then again, it's hard enough for us to get people to watch stuff for free. So, but bottom line, try to be ethical with the things you do, and realize there is a end of the line impact on real people's lives. Less so,
and the content you actually want to see. If you just want to look at it as far as impacting you, there is a ripple effect of you may not get as much content.
You'll get more. You'll get more Star Wars sequels and less movies like. Trying to think of original projects that are out there. Like Stranger Things was an original. It was granted it's an homage to a lot of stuff, but that existed because Netflix had algorithms that said people want to see this type of content. But if they know people are just going to rip it off and pirate it, then they're less inclined to want to make that. So that's just kind of the basics on that. But other news, John Carpenter is supposedly not going to just be a producer and name only or credit only on the new Halloween film, which is going to be shooting soon in South Carolina. So it looks like that is actually happening. And Jason Blum had bet his life on it that it would be done and released on the date that they've said. So that'll be entertaining to see where that goes. I would assume there'll be a trailer for it at some point next year. If they're just starting to shoot soon, you would think there'd be a trailer out by summer, because I would assume they're going to set up to be a big release. Even though the budget is, they had said it would be a smaller budget, relatively speaking, like $10 to $15 million, somewhere in that range. I would assume they would put a pretty big marketing push behind it.
Yeah, Blumhouse will put some marketing behind their stuff, which, it shows the success they have financially at the box office. Like,
Get Out, Split.
They market their film. A lot of companies seem to either acquire films or produce them and then get cold feet and not put the money in behind the marketing, and then they flop and they wonder why. Like,
they almost get embarrassed by the movies.
Yes, yeah. So,
or they mismarket them majorly.
Yeah, and the fact that Blumhouse puts out so many horror films a year, like, they have a lot of chances to put Halloween trailers out in front of all the films that before they're coming out.
Yeah, that's a good point. And they have a pretty good track record. So
I think this will be probably the biggest build up to any film they've ever done. You know what I mean? As far as, like, I could see them even releasing a teaser, as soon as they start shooting, even like some images. Like, I think but they may hold off. They may be super secret about it and really wait until closer to release. They may take that strategy, which, there's no one right way to do it, but I think they're going to be very careful about how to handle this film as far as the marketing and buzz goes.
Yeah, it's because it's a franchise that's not exactly been at the front of the mind for a lot of fans for a while, and we've seen things like It, and even more just like horror adjacent properties like Stranger Things. But I think this will be a big build up, and the horror community is going to get one of their marquee franchises, because like Cult of Chucky, it's digital release platform and TV and things like that. There hasn't been a new Friday the 13th in a while. There hasn't been a new Halloween. There hasn't been a Nightmare on Elm Street in a while. So this is like one of those marquee franchises getting a theatrical release that's like going to be a big time thing that we talked about on the late night shows. You'll see Jamie Lee Curtis on those shows. Yeah. Depending on who the other cast members are.
As far as the kind of the big heavy hitter horror franchises from the 80s, this is the biggest one to come out since the Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street remakes.
Yeah, it was
right?
like 2009 and 10.
Yeah, like
then you had you could argue Scream was that was the 90s when it originated, but it came out in 2011, I believe, and did not do very well at the box office. But yeah, so then other brief news: Hocus Pocus might be getting a TV remake, which, I guess they want to make it on a lower budget and make it for TV. I guess that could work. A lot of those properties have done well on TV. I think it would be Disney behind it, so nothing I would be excited about. It's probably more aimed at kids, I would think.
Yeah, my wife loves Hocus Pocus. She loved it as a kid, and so she still likes it now. But let's just hope that the other one, it's a kids movie, but it has some appeal for adults. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just like it's not a big turnoff that it's a kids film. Some of those kids films are just, they kind of speak to kids like they're idiots. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily do that. It's goofy fun or whatever, but hopefully it's not the type of Disney film that is some of those TV properties on Disney
saccharine sweet
that are just so
hard
to sit through
as an adult.
Yeah, it's so weird though, because Disney will put out some great animated films that are great for all ages.
Yeah,
and then their TV output is just. Well, like some
of this stuff, like Hannah Montana and some of their different shows, there's a very specific acting style that's so heightened, it's hard to watch it and enjoy it as an adult. Some people that might be their.
It's the precursor to the YouTube stars heightened heightened performance and stuff. It's almost like those people grew up watching those shows and then perform that for the camera.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's handled well. Just for fans of the series, I don't really care either that much. But also, too, we got Boo, Medea Halloween 2 coming out also.
In October?
Yeah.
The first one made quite a bit of money.
I missed that there was an announcement of that, I guess, a little bit earlier this year. And then now there's a teaser out for it.
Yeah, it looks like more of the same. It looks like it's going for that kind of a Tyler Perry audience more than a general horror audience.
Yeah.
From what I gathered, never watched the first one. One of our friends, Jake, talked about watching it, and he seemed to enjoy it, but not like on it was scary level, more of it was enjoyable to watch.
I think he said he got high, went to theaters and watched it, and he was like, "Yeah, I laughed."
Yeah,
that was one of our podcasts last year, I believe.
Yeah.
Any other news? I mean, there's tons of just like little updates to stuff that's not
nothing really
all that.
substantive.
Yeah, all that groundbreaking.
And I feel like we talked about Halloween enough until there's a trailer, because there's been a lot of stuff on that.
Or any kind of crazy major news about it.
Yeah, and I guess we can move into what we've been watching.
Well, what you've been doing too. I was gonna say.
So in lieu of watching anything, I went to Chicago this past weekend, and while I was there, I went to this pop-up bar that was called the Upside Down. That was just kind of like a limited time thing. You may have seen things about it in the news, so it was a Stranger Things themed bar. And you can check our Instagram to see some pictures of it. So HBTVS_official. And it was a pop-up bar that had drinks that were themed, or Stranger Things themed, and had things to do with the different characters on the show. I'll pull up what the menu was. And they had different decorations in the bar that were reminiscent of the show. They had like furniture and stuff on the ceiling to,
That's cool.
Kind of the upside down and the telekinesis aspect. They had signs that said "Welcome to Hawkins." They had.
I bet that was really fun for the people to design that bar and put it together. The interior designers and everything.
And then they had the wall with like the Christmas lights and the letters on it, and they had a bunch of Christmas lights strung up over the bathroom area, the hallway that went to it.
You said the drinks were really good too, right?
Yeah, the drinks are really good. I mean, unfortunately, it's closed. Because they got a cease and desist letter from Netflix that said once your current run is done, please cease operating this, because they didn't get the official sign off.
Oh, it's not officially licensed.
No, it was. They just did it, and then Netflix is like, "Hey guys, think it's cool, but once your run is done on October 1st, you got to shut it down." Without getting proper licensing and approval. So they got a really nice cease and desist letter that let it keep operating. So we got there on a Thursday, like soon after they opened. And we still had to wait in line for a little bit. It was only like 5 or 10 minutes. But once we left, the line was around the block. I think it stayed that way the rest of the weekend.
Wow. I didn't know. Because there was locally there was a pop-up bar for Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And I just assume, because they're both Netflix produced series, that was for the new Gilmore Girls on Netflix. I thought, they're doing one for Stranger Things. That's
it wasn't licensed.
A deal they're doing. Oh, that's pretty wild.
They just tried to fly under the radar for a little while. So some of the drinks they had one called 11's Eggos, which was really good. It had it was kind of like a slushy drink. If you look on our Instagram, you can see the picture of what it is if you want to make some of these drinks on your own. But that one had Angel's Envy bourbon, lemon, orange, cranberry, and maple syrup, and then had a little piece of waffle in it. There's one that said snack pack, third time's the charm. Did not try that one. There's one called Demogorgon, which I had, which was really good. Which was I can't read this at the moment. She's Our Friend and She's Crazy, which was good, and Mouth Breather, which was good. So all their mixed drinks are good. You look at our Instagram page if you want to make some of the drinks on your own. But like I said, they had different, they had scenes. They had like a bicycle that was on the wall. And they had a projector playing the movie, or not the movie, the show. They was projecting the show, and it said like Hawkins AV Club or something like that. I don't remember what else there was. But yeah, I mean, it was a cool little theme bar. It wasn't a very big space. It was just kind of like a normal dive bar size, just an open area. And then they had those different decorations, and apparently they operate different pop-ups at different times or different scenarios. Like there's one that was like a backyard cookout where the DJ's laptop and all the setup was inside like a grill. And then they had like cornhole and stuff in there. So they do different things at different times. Like I said, you can go to our Instagram page and see some of those pictures.
I mean, that's a very smart idea. I mean, financially, obviously it costs a lot of money to kind of, buy the decor for the bar each time, but it's incentive for people to come, you know what I mean, all the time to check it out.
Well, once they got that cease and desist letter, it became, because it had already been talked about and I'd seen it discussed on social media, which was when Julie and I decided to go down there to Chicago and visit some of our friends, and then while you're there, go there. But once it got the cease and desist letter, then it got national press, even more national press across a bunch of different sites, and it's been mentioned across different horror blogs and podcasts and things like that. So I got to check it out before it closed down. It was really fun. Like I said, you can make the drinks if you want yourself. The 11's Eggo was really good, and I would recommend trying to make some of those. But yes, that's what I did. I also went to do some other touristy things. I went to some of the museums and the beach and stuff there. Didn't swim; it was too cold.
So you went to the museum. It was a Jurassic World.
Yeah, at
thing?
the Field Museum, they had a Jurassic World exhibit and had animatronic dinosaurs in there.
That's sweet. I've been there twice, like once in 8th grade, and then Nicole and I went to the museum. But that is awesome. Yeah, well, I saw some of your pictures, and I saw it was like the Jurassic Park font.
Yeah.
And I thought they were like ripping. I was like, oh, they're ripping off because in your picture order it was like just some of those, and then I saw the Jurassic World thing.
Yeah, it was like officially licensed part of the museum. So that was cool. I mean, that's still going on. You check that out. The Stranger Things pop-up bar, I think, ended on the 1st. So maybe tonight's the last night. We're recording this on Sunday, October 1st. So you can check videos and stuff out of it, but it's cool. I mean, I don't know if they'll be able to do another one without getting official blessing from Netflix. But if Netflix is going to do it, it'll probably be like in New York or LA, I would think, just because that's where most of those...
Let's just start doing a HBTVS pop-up bars of our favorite horror films, you know?
I said, like, you could do like a Halloween one easy.
Yeah.
Just general, generic Halloween decor and somebody in the Michael Myers costume.
Yeah.
And then you could have like a girl that looks vaguely like Jamie Lee Curtis wearing a blue button down and jeans. There you go. Have a bartender, and then have a bartender that's wearing...
The bartender's Rob Zombie. And then, we have another one that looks like John Carpenter.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was what I did. Didn't get a chance to watch anything really because I had to get ready for that trip and was out of town all weekend. But
that's cool though. That's fun. I went to we went to LA for kind of our honeymoon type thing. We went to at the LACMA. Elvis Mitchell, who's a film critic, he has a radio show, podcast. He had a TV show and stuff. He was kind of hosting. I don't know if he curated it, but essentially it was a Stanley Kubrick exhibit there. It was the first time Stanley Kubrick has like a exhibit in a art museum, but it was like all of his vintage lenses, props from the movies, all this stuff. It was big. It was on actually Halloween night. Is when it opened, and they had a big costume contest, but they also had like themed drinks, and they had one that was red rum. It was like one of the best mixed drinks I've ever had, and I always try to figure out what it was. Nicole has kind of approximated some, but still, I had one of those drinks, and it was so awesome, and I'll never know what was in it.
Well, like the 11's Eggo, we both, like, Julie and I really liked it, and I think she might make some, so maybe we'll do that for Stranger Things Season 2.
Yeah, let me know when you guys make some, if it turns out well.
I mean, it looked pretty. You just gotta blend it.
Nicole can drink now too, now that she's not pregnant anymore.
Yeah,
that's what we've been talking about. This stuff's fun. Like, I love it whenever there's like spaces you can go to enjoy like the films you like, and I never get to go to that hardly. Like I said, the Stanley Kubrick thing was like a huge bonus. We saw that was going on, and was like, that's a definite must go to.
Well, and two, that brings people to the spot where they generally they like one thing you like. So it's easier just to talk about that property with people there, and then you can kind of open it up a little bit into other things you're interested in. Now, granted, some people go there just for the Instagram pictures because they know it's going to be popular, things like that, but it does at least create conversation around these things that you're interested in. And then maybe like that Stranger Things bar, like we talked to a few people there who weren't with the group I was with, but there was opportunity there to be like, oh, well, if you like Stranger Things, have you checked out this? Mm-hmm. Have you checked out this? Here's some of the things that inspired it. Maybe you should go watch The Thing. You should watch Evil Dead. Watch pretty much any Stephen King movie. Definitely go watch the new It movie because it has a very similar vibe. So there's a lot of things you can point out to people, that are influences, John Carpenter stuff. So there's a lot of things like that are cool about those just kind of communal experiences around something. So, like the Stanley Kubrick thing, I would think most people go in there.
I mean, it was on Halloween night, so...
More general fans then?
I mean, I don't think so, because I think a general fan... I mean, general fans, but... I mean, you would think, like, they have those huge Halloween parades in LA and everything. Yeah. Like, we missed out on one of the big Halloween parades to go to that specifically. So, a lot of people there were dressed up in very awesome costumes. And, like, I think it was it was at an art museum. I think it was a lot of cinephiles, actually. So, it was, like, pretty cool, just everybody like really appreciating all that stuff there. Like that was one of the coolest things I've ever, just because I was like huge. I mean, I am a huge Stanley Kubrick fan.
Yeah.
But like each room would have like a different, basically movie exhibit. You know what I mean? So there'd be like one that was all The Shining, and then A Clockwork Orange, and 2001: Space Odyssey, and it was like the baby at the end, and the monkey costumes and all that stuff. And so Yeah, that is awesome. Whenever you can go to a place that it's a shared experience. It's it's a message board in real life.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was all I got to do. So you watched the new Netflix release, Gerald game, right?
Yes, yeah.
Stephen King adaptation by Mike Flanagan, who did Hush and Ouija Origin of Evil and Absentia.
And he's doing the King Kong, King of the Monsters, or Godzilla, King of the Monsters?
No, that was the new Godzilla movie is Michael Daugherty, who did Trick or Treat, which we talked about.
Okay. That's what I was looking up Michael Daugherty, and I got.
And then Adam Wingard is doing King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yes.
And Jordan Vogt Roberts did the recent Kong Skull Island.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm like, I just took a nap before the podcast. I'm like, wasn't huge on Hush. I haven't watched it again. I know Nathan was like, you really need to watch that film again. It was fine, but I did not really enjoy it a whole lot. And he did Ouija too, right?
Yes, the Origin of Evil.
I thought that was pretty good for what it was. It was fine. I don't really have any desire to watch it again, but it wasn't offensive or anything like that. Like, it was well done. Just not my type of film, really. Not my type of horror that I like a whole lot. But this I liked a lot. Like Carla Gugino. I like her a lot. So I actually saw the trailer, and I said something to you like, hey, we should watch it this week, because I just saw the trailer on Netflix.
Yeah.
Had no idea what it was, and then kind of saw who was involved, and it was a Stephen King novel. And then you were like, oh, no, that's not till next week. I totally ignored the trailer date. But just seeing her in it and the talent involved, I was interested. So it is one of those stories where, I almost compare it to Saw, because it's, and there's other films like this, but it's almost like takes place in a single room.
Yeah, I heard that. It was kind of a single location.
And watching the trailer too, and sometimes I'm like, a film has to be really good to pull that off well, I think.
Yeah.
Because you can see that getting really boring, and you kind of know like, oh, do I want to watch a film that's an hour and a half long in one location with maybe one actor, essentially figuring things out or whatever. But really it's a lot bigger than that. I'm not saying it goes a lot of places, but the way they handle it is a lot more interesting, and it's not just her talking to herself for an hour and a half and figuring things out. Stephen King, he keeps taking things further and further and folding things in, and it's not simple enough for him to have a concept of essentially. Her and her husband go to, I guess, like their lake house or whatever. They get in bed. He handcuffs her, so they can have sex. And then, do you know what happens after that?
No, he dies.
Yeah, he dies. Okay, so he dies.
Basic spoiler.
That's the setup for the film.
Yeah, that's what sets up because I haven't seen the trailer. I just saw like a basic log line.
Yeah, so that's where you're at. So you think, it's so much. There's so many more things in that, because you can see a lot of films relying on that.
Yeah.
And just like, ooh, this is a tense situation. What is she going to do to get out of it?
Yeah.
But no, it goes many more places than that. So it's way more interesting than just somebody in a room trying to figure out how to get out.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that. Having said that, some of the stuff at the end, like Nicole and I both really enjoyed the film. The last part of it almost like went a little too far. I was like, all right, Stephen King, you didn't really need to do that. You know what I mean? It's almost seems like it was, I don't know, it didn't need to go that extra little step.
Was it trying to be shocking for shocking's sake?
No, it's not even shocking. It's almost just like exposition stuff at the end. You know what I mean?
Too much information.
Yeah,
maybe.
and it's like, that's what my wife was like, I wish they wouldn't have like pulled the curtain back that far. Or that's about as much as I'll say about it. But they didn't need to, because it was satisfying on its own. And it didn't ruin the film at all for me. Like, I'm not somebody who, if the ending's not perfect, because the actual like resolution of the film and all that stuff is very satisfying.
Yeah.
That all works really well, I think. It's some super awesome moments in that film, and it was really well done. Like, it's my favorite Mike Flanagan film by far. Because I wasn't super hot on either of the other ones, but at the same time, like, all right, now I'm interested in seeing what he's going to do next.
Well,
he handled this really well.
He does solid work.
Yeah.
And because like something that they get to say for both Ouija Origin of Evil and Annabelle Creation is they got directors who aren't just gonna paint by numbers and who do something slightly, interesting with the execution with those properties that were about a board game and a doll, and had effective set pieces and did things that were overall big improvements over the original films. So playing against somebody that when his name's attached to something, it's not like, oh, I've got to watch it. It's just something where it's like, okay, he'll do something competent.
Yeah, you're like, all right, I want to see what he's gonna do.
But I need to watch that movie.
I recommend. I mean, if you got Netflix, I definitely recommend watching it. It's not outright straight horror. I saw like some comments somewhere on Instagram or something, and people like, oh, it's not scary, and people were like, it's not really one of his horror novels. It's more of like
a psychological thriller.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's like hard to call it a super thriller because there's not like a lot of super build up, or I don't know. But it's a very interesting thing. For me, I was like, okay, Stephen King likes to have people tied to beds. It made me think of Misery a little bit, and Misery's a great film as well. But yeah, it's not. Obviously, it's not it or anything like that. But it's very good. I super enjoyed it. I heard somebody else saying that it was like one of the best Stephen King adaptations as far as I think being accurate to the source material.
Yeah,
almost. But so definitely check that out. Great performances. It looks really good. Like I said, I really like his direction in this film and the things going on in it. Basically, the way he handled shooting this film and everything, very well done. Like there's nothing in me that thought, that's a little whatever. But yeah, great job on that. I'm excited to see what he does next as well. If it's something that maybe appeals to me more than like something like a Ouija 2 Origin of Evil.
So if you had to like general landing spot on like a review for it.
Oh, at least an 8, I think.
Okay, so
I think an 8.
I'm definitely going to watch it. I just didn't get a chance because we had a flight and in and out. And
I mean, it's a great Netflix film. You know what I mean? Like again, it's not a huge budget probably because it is primarily in one location or whatever.
But one of those moderate, still probably micro budget by studio standards.
Yes.
Something probably like in the 5 to 10 million range or something.
Yeah, like it's it's like a step above a TV movie.
Yeah.
But maybe not something that all theatrical audiences would walk out thinking, oh, my mind wasn't blown, just because sometimes they want these huge set pieces or you know what I mean, just like they want a lot of scares or whatever. Like it may have been a little bit harder to sell this in theaters. I think that's what's interesting about it, that it's not strictly a horror film. It's not super thrillerish. It doesn't have the same qualities or kind of elicits the same reaction that you may have watching a thriller. But it's a good film. You know, it's a weird thing. So it's great that Netflix is able to put some money behind this and make this adaptation that works by Michael Flanagan. The other thing I watched was, is it Anna Lillipour? I can't think of her.
The Bad Batch?
Yes. Is
Anna Lily Amapar?
Yeah, The Bad Batch. So I was really interested in that. I just never got around to watching it. It came out last year because I really liked A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Yes.
Or A Girl Walks Alone Home at Night.
Yes,
one of those two.
That one. I really enjoyed that. That was, it wasn't like, again, it wasn't a strictly speaking a horror film. It's about like Iranian vampires and all this stuff.
It's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
Yeah. So it's not like that was a straight genre film at all, but very much like a great calling card for her. And I think it was a great film, but it was nothing that teetered on any sort of like strong genre conventions that kind of got the same rise out of you as a lot of genre films. Like it does, it leans on genre for sure, but it does something so much more interesting, I think, and fresh, and that's what made it so great. This is like a post-apocalyptic film a little bit, obviously smaller scale, but it's got what is his name? The dude,
Jason Momoa, who's Aquaman, and Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, Jim Carrey is in it a little bit, and Keanu Reeves. I enjoyed it. I remember hearing like some people weren't super hot on it.
Pretty mixed on a lot of their reviews.
So I was like, a little busy at the time, didn't make out to see it at the limited release that was here, and then just never paid to rent it. But I enjoyed it, and Nicole did too. She's like, no, it wasn't a bad film at all. It's just not, almost like A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. There's not a lot of scenes in there that kind of really get your blood pumping or anything. Like you just kind of let yourself watch the film. It's a little bit long. I think it's like close to 2 hours. And I'm not saying it really earns that runtime, but then again, like something like Twin Peaks: The Return, you could argue that it doesn't earn that runtime on some people's views because maybe not a lot happens on some elements, but at the same time, a lot of stuff is still happening. That's how I feel this is. You're kind of just with this woman in this environment, and things are just happening, and a lot of it almost feels like a music video as far as just the set design and some of the music sequences and stuff, the use of music, which I think she does very well in both films. But there is a couple like pretty brutal scenes and stuff. I enjoyed it. If you liked her other film, I recommend absolutely checking it out. She's just an interesting, I think, filmmaker, and I'm again gonna keep up with her stuff as well. I liked it better than I expected based on some of the initial reactions, but it wasn't like a knockout for me. I'm not going to recommend it to everybody, but pretty good.
Lower than Gerald's Game.
Yeah, lower than Gerald's Game, but not like, I don't know, maybe like a 7.
Yeah.
And it is definitely a film that maybe appeals to people on a personal level. Like the ratings could be all over the board for this film. Yeah. Gerald's Game, I think, will land closer to a solid rating. Yeah. With most people. Bad Batch is very much based on taste.
Once you ratings are all subjective and not really comparable and kind of...
But the Bad Batch is definitely going to turn off a lot of people, and it may appeal to more people.
Yeah.
Gerald's Game is just a solid, down the line, good little genre film.
Yeah, so now we move into our review of Trick or Treat. We'll do full spoilers for it since it's been out for quite a while. It's listed on IMDb. It's come out in 2007, but I did not get to see it till 2009 because it didn't get a theatrical release and it hit video. And it seemed like it screened at a bunch of festivals and killed it and just never got a release. And then it hit video in 2009, which was when I finally saw it. So
I think this was a film that I think at the time I was working at FedEx with Nick Wood, friend of the site, and he is a diehard horror fan. So he would always keep me up on a lot of stuff. Like I would follow news and everything. We both talked about things, but he was the one where that was his sole focus in life is horror. I'm into video games and filmmaking and all kinds of different films, like both of us are. But he's like straight down the line horror. So his fingers on the pulse of that at all times. And I remember us talking a lot about it and talking to you about it too in college, and just hearing about this film. I think he got a pirated copy. I think this is one of those films that it wasn't sure when it was coming out or if it was, and then it leaked somewhere. I believe
there was a teaser for it on like an X-Men DVD or something, because it was produced by Bryan Singer. Because Michael Daugherty was one of the writers on X-Men 2, I believe. Yeah. And then I think it was on a DVD for something, and I remember hearing about it, and I remember reading reviews on a bunch of different sites that talked about how it would screen at festivals and get a huge reaction. Everybody loved it. And then just like, okay, but when's it coming out? When can I watch it? And it just kept like getting pushed out, and like took over 2 years for it to finally be able to be viewable by people legally.
So yeah, and like you said, full spoilers. So I've seen this film actually a whole lot. Like first time I watched it, I liked it a lot. I was like, does it live up to the hype of this mythical, like awesome horror anthology? And I was like, it's not a 10 out of 10, but I was like, I still really liked it. Yeah. And I found myself watching this film a whole lot over the years, more so than I think a lot of recent genre films that have came out in the past decade. Yeah. And I almost was like, if I get too busy, that's why I watched Gerald's Game first. I was like, if I got too busy, I've seen Trick or Treat so many times. Yeah. I don't even really need to watch it again. Yeah. So this time I watched it with the commentary, and it sounds like there was a lot of, as there is with horror films, back and forth with the tone on it. Yeah. They try to go with, he was trying to keep it kind of, I don't want to say, hokey is not the word.
Tongue-in-cheek or...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The tone of the film is very much like they understand what Halloween is. They lean into kind of the fun, and kind of magical aspect of it. Yeah. And it's not all super serious and dark. Well, it sounds like the studios kind of sometimes want him to cut back on some of the humor elements.
And be just more dark and scary.
Like figure out, and with the music and everything like that. So it sounds like that could have been a little bit of the maybe hold up. He didn't say that. They didn't say that on the commentary. But considering how hard of the time studios have marketing horror films that aren't straight horror.
Yeah.
I could see that being kind of maybe some of the push and pull, because they even shot like, he's apparently went to a lot of different cuts of the film, and then certain scenes were shot that, you know what I mean, that they ended up not doing. There was talk about the dog getting killed. The dog trainer said, like, go ahead and get a shot of the dog living, because almost every time I've worked on, they ended up having to do a reshoot of the dog living, you know.
Yeah.
So, but he does die in the film with that Brian Cox's dog at the end. But so I'm wondering if that was the case where they just didn't really know how to position it, because studios are afraid of horror comedies, and this is closer to a horror comedy than something like The Conjuring. You know what I mean?
Because like a horror comedy, like there's been a lot of them. So, you know, talking about
Audiences
movies,
just don't understand them for some reason.
talking about movies that took a while to come out. Cabin in the Woods is another one where there was a trailer for it. There was discussion of Joss Whedon co-wrote some horror film called Cabin in the Woods, and it just took a long time for it to finally come out, because I think it was done in like 2009, and then took until 2012 to actually hit theaters to be watchable or to be viewable by the audience.
And again, Joss Whedon, huge name, seemingly a decent amount of pull in the industry, not some like small fry. And then Bryan Singer, producer on this, you know, maybe more pull than he used to have. Maybe he had more pull back then. I don't know. Maybe he's building up his cachet again. But again, like, these people have power in the industry, and they still can't get like a horror comedy pushed through right away.
And then there's things like Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, which had great reputations and did well at festivals, and really found their footing on home video and became like cult hits, but weren't, you know, huge like cultural touchstones. Because I think with the main thing that we've seen with a lot of short films that we've worked on or things we've been involved with, people say, oh, it wasn't scary. So horror, if it has horror in the title, or, you know, if it's classified as horror and it's not scary, then half people are like, oh, well, I don't like this.
Yeah, they think it's not horror
and
because
then,
it doesn't fit in their...
Which is a big thing against the new It. It's like, oh, it's not horror because I didn't get scared.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, horror is a genre, doesn't require it to be scary. Now, there are very effective scenes that can, you know, excite and thrill and scare at times, but, you know, sometimes the goal is not just to do a cookie cutter jump scare fest, but to try to do something that builds fear in a different way or just entertains.
The thing is, a lot of horror films they make their money on teenagers. The damn kids need to be educated on the horror comedies too. They need to start them young on horror comedies, and so they can be prepared to accept that what it is. I mean, again, like when I was a kid, one of my favorite films, probably, you know, probably one of the first like horror-ish films I watched, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Like, you know, love that film. So like for the most part, I started out like thinking that stuff was fun rather than scary, like from the beginning. And maybe that's why I'm just that stuff appeals to me, and it's not the strictly being scared part. Wizard of Oz scared me more than any horror film when I was younger, like The Witch, you know what I mean? Like, so like, I don't know what it is, but it seems like a lot of people miss out on watching horror comedies, and then the teenagers go to theaters or older audience members, and then they are like blown away if there's humor in it, and they think it's ridiculous, and you know, and like, you know, they think it's almost like senseless or a pointless film if it's not just scaring them the whole time.
Yeah, if somebody, you know, like Cabin in the Woods, when I came out of that movie, half the audience were wearing like Evil Dead shirts, or, you know, something to indicate they knew who Joss Whedon was, and they had a general knowledge of horror, and they came out and were talking about how they enjoyed the movie. And then the other half of the audience came in expecting the straightforward Cabin in the Woods kind of Evil Dead knockoff type film they thought it was going to be, and were vastly disappointed because, you know, I won't spoil that movie just because it's not about that, but, you know, there's a thing in that movie that involves like different elements that are meant to be humorous.
It's a meta film.
It's meant to be humorous, and when they saw that, it's like, okay, that's it. This is the stupidest thing I've seen. This is in the movie. I don't even care. So I think that like with Trick or Treat, I feel like it's a movie that's far more entertaining than it is scary. Because like when I watched it for the first time, I think I watched it with a group of people that were, some of them were not really big horror people and was somewhat squeamish, but nobody was really scared. Yeah. Some people would like anticipate being scared and then have fun with it, but then not actually be all that scared about it.
You know, thinking about, you know, what you said about the audience's reaction to that stuff, it makes me think that they were very smart in going in the straightforward approach to the Evil Dead remake. You know what I mean? And then the TV show, in the TV show, they're doing it for the fans essentially.
Yeah.
And then the remake, it was a pretty brutal.
There was comedy.
Experience.
There was comedy in it, and how over the top the brutality and gore got.
But it
was
wasn't
played straight.
Yes, it was played straight, and I think that's why that film was successful on many levels with audience members and financially and all that stuff. And of course, at the time we wanted Bruce Campbell and that kind of tone. We wanted Evil Dead 2 before, and I think a lot of people were like willing to accept that film for what it was before it came out because Sam Raimi was involved and stuff like that on a producer level. But yeah, it seems like they kind of, Sam Raimi maybe knew like, all right, we need to play this straight. And then the TV series came along, like, okay, now let's have fun for the fans.
Because the horror comedies not being as successful as you would think, but then on top of that, anthologies are not as successful at the big, major international box office as you would think. Because a lot of times, there's a lot of horror anthologies that are independent, and that's because that's an easier way to produce a film. If you only have to worry, especially if you have different directors for each segment, then you're essentially making, like 5 or 6 short films versus making one cohesive film that has the same crew, directors, cast, and everything working on it throughout. So it's an easier way to make a runtime of an hour, hour and a half on a small budget than a 1 hour continuous storyline. So, but the big movies that are horror anthologies everyone knows of, they're not super successful at the box office compared to something like Saw. I think has outgrossed every horror anthology. It grossed more than the best, the highest grossing horror anthology. And Paranormal Activity grossed more than any of them. Even some of the movies like Insidious Chapter 3, I think, outgrossed without adjusting for inflation a lot of the horror anthologies. So they're a genre it's a subgenre that a lot of horror fans like, and that there's a lot of them being made for horror fans now, like on moderate to low budgets. But they're not like a blockbuster, thing that automatically draws the audiences in. So you have the anthology, and that it's there's humor in it, so it's not played straightforward. Are two things where you really need genre fans to watch this.
And also, too, something they kept bringing up in the commentary, they were like, oh, this is the part where we lost the grandmas. This is a single director anthology film, but all the stories are connected. It's all taking place in the same town, and it's not in chronological order. But there's not clear scene breaks and stuff like that.
Yeah, kind of just jumps from one section to another.
All of a sudden when things are happening, but you don't know when they're taking place until you see characters pop up that have already died and stuff.
Kind of like Pulp Fiction.
Yes, so they kept saying like, oh, this is where we lost the grandmas, and they essentially some of the feedback from the audiences were like, it's too confusing and all that stuff. So I'm sure that also was a lot of the studio's reluctantness to release it theatrically.
Because you'll see, like I said, full spoilers, you'll see a section where the character played by Dylan Baker is like, who's like the principal, is at his house, and he's dealing with like the dead kid's body, and then you see Brian Cox and the dog, and then
he's, like, asking for help or whatever. Yeah.
So you have these background things going on that you then later see the full context and know what's happening. So it lays the story out in a non-linear fashion with the stories crisscrossing and characters coming across other characters, and then so there's a connective tissue that connects all the different parts. And then the opening segment with the boyfriend, girlfriend, or husband and wife coming back from the Halloween party, and then the girlfriend gets killed by Sam. That then you see them later at the party when you see other characters around. So it kind of connects everything, but it's not told in a straightforward linear fashion, which to me, once I watched it, all clicked and made sense.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it was that confusing, but for a general audience, without having date and time cards in the movie and titles, I could see it losing some people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird balance because that's what makes the film so great as well. If it was just straightforward and broken up into segments, I would not like this film as much. It just makes it more interesting watch, and it's a balance that you have to pull.
Well, it's one of those watches, too, that you don't watch it for a while and you rewatch it and you're like, oh, okay. And then, like, it's a movie that, doesn't require, but it demands or, really works better if you've watched it multiple times. Because once you've seen the entire story, then you watch it again, you can look for all the connective tissue once you know what's going on. So I think it's a movie that rewards on multiple rewatches, and it's not that long. It's under an hour and a half, which is a big bonus. And since it's a single director, there's a cohesive feel to it that you don't necessarily get with something like Tales of Halloween or VHS.
And a solid level of quality through all the segments. Because
you may like some parts better than others, but you got Brian Cox, You got Anna Paquin, who were both in like those X-Men films, so it shows that connection.
Well, and Sue,
Dylan,
the principal,
Dylan Baker, he was in the Spider-Man films, I think, as Kurt Connors, but then they never got around to doing the Lizard.
Yeah, and wasn't he in the first X-Men film as the senator or somebody like that?
No,
that's somebody else. But I think there's another guy, the husband at the beginning. I don't know if he was in X-Men, but in the commentary, I think they talked about almost picking him for a part in X-Men, but they end up picking somebody else, so they didn't work with that guy. But
Tamal Pennicott, he was in Battlestar Galactica and that Joss Whedon show Dollhouse. That was on Fox. Yeah. He was on some of that other genre stuff. And he was in Man of Steel and then in a role. But it had like some familiar faces. And Anna Paquin, who was Rogue in the X-Men films and has been in other things.
Brian Cox is awesome in this, I think. I mean, again, just general thoughts on it. Like, I really liked it when I first watched it, but it had been built up so much. You know, it wasn't suddenly like one of my favorite horror films of all time, or Halloween horror films of all time. It was very solid, and I thought, okay, yeah, this is really good. This is one I'll watch multiple times. But honestly, it's hard to compete with anything that you have watched a lot, like Evil Dead or something like that. You can't just jump into one film and, you know, expect it to kind of put up a fight against some of these films that you've watched for 20 years. Yeah. But actually now living with this film for like 9 years or however long it's been available, or
at least
to
like
watch.
7 or 8.
Yeah, it's really starting to build a big cachet for me, and it's becoming something I watch every year, and really, I really like this film a lot. Like, I do love the connective tissue. I like all the stories, some more than others, but each one at least has a very strong element to it or scene in there that makes it stand out. And it's a real shame that this film just had a hell of a time getting out.
Yeah, I mean, and two, the visuals, you know, it looks good.
Yeah, it's a great looking movie.
It sounds good. It has, you know, the music doesn't really leap out as like head and tails above, or, you know, head and shoulders above other projects, but there's nothing about the music adds to the atmosphere. There's nothing about it that really subtracts. I think the movie, just to me, when you watch it, it feels like Halloween. It's a movie that some horror films you can kind of watch whenever, like Evil Dead 2, I'll throw on. Sometimes I just want to throw something on the background, or The Thing, because I'm so used to it. Even though I really prefer to watch The Thing when it's cold out for some reason. But Trick or Treat, I really like to watch during the month of October, because to me that's one of those movies that helps you get in the mood for Halloween, like the original Halloween. And there's a number of films that feel like the holiday and that feel like, you know, October, that feels like fall. And this is one of those movies where it feels like October. Watching that movie, you can almost smell like the things that you smell around that time of year. And evoking that feeling is a hard thing to do. And so many things fail at it so bad, you know, so poorly. Like TV specials. A lot of TV specials from those 90s shows evoke those feelings very well. Like Roseanne and a lot of different shows would make you feel like it was, you know,
I feel like
October.
you got to put on a sweater. You know what I mean? While you're watching it, just a light sweater. Just a light sweater.
Some of the movie does kind of feel like those TV specials in terms of the aesthetics and things like that. So the movie just feels like Halloween. And like you said, there's a lot of people, like a lot of faces in it that you'll recognize, because so Leslie Bibb is like the girlfriend or wife in the kind of one of the early sequences that's killed by Sam. Like, she's in a ton of stuff, but just, you know, not a huge role, but that's, you know, I'm sure a lot of people know somebody that's kind of like not a huge fan of the holidays, like take the decorations down. Yes. Yeah. So the movie was kind of playing on the traditions of Halloween.
Yeah, and it was almost like these stories you've heard before on some level, but done for Halloween. You know, like her, it does feel like she's almost like another Grinch. Yeah. You know, and then Brian Cox is like Scrooge. Yeah. You know, they bring that up in the commentary as well. But yeah, she's like a Grinch that gets hers. You know, and it's almost like familiar stories and tropes and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's infused with the feel of Halloween, and the execution is so well done. Like, you know, so the visuals, like watching this again too, I was almost taken aback, like, man, this is a really good looking film. Yeah. And it is because I think we've watched so many different types of horror films since then, and even in theaters, but a lot of them don't stack up to how good this film looks, and just the feel of it, and the color palette is so good.
There's practical things, there's puppets. The Sam puppet, when you actually get the hood taken off, looks good. And there's just a lot of elements to it, like I said, that feel like you could have released this in the 80s and it would have fit right in and, been a hit then too.
I think all around, the entire production crew, cast, everybody, like, it was a really lot of people that are very good at their jobs. The sound design, like, all of it is it just blends so well together, I think.
Like, the only thing I think it's really lacking is, like, an iconic theme that you can just hear in your head off the bat. But, I mean, not everything has to have that.
I think Sam has a little bit of one. It's not strong. Obviously, it's not Michael Myers.
Yeah, it's not Halloween. It's not Exorcist.
But it does have Sam that is a little iconic character now.
Yes.
And he's really built a lot of cachet and is an awesome little character. In the commentary, he talks about wanting to... He's like, if we did a sequel, I'd want to almost, like... go into his backstory, and then I saw a recent article about, like, or maybe from last year, he's like, I don't want to, of course, give everything away, but in that he was talking about him being born out of a pumpkin patch, and there was a painting that kind of reminded him of kind of maybe the origin of Sam, but he said he's never really nailed down exactly what he wants to do with it, but he also kind of always thought that maybe Sam carved his own face as well, like that smile on it and stuff, like. But yeah, Sam is just an awesome little iconic little character as well, and it's not heavy. It's not like he's like just the whole film is about him running around killing people, because a very straightforward fashion. He is kind of the link between all these stories, and he's a little mysterious at the same time.
Kind of like the spirit of Halloween.
Yes,
people who go against that are punished, and either he's directly involved in it doing himself, or just kind of related to it in some way.
Brian Cox, he happens to get that candy bar from Brian Cox, and then he leaves him alone. And to the candy bar with a razor blade in it, I don't know if I'd ever noticed this, but in the commentary they said that's a candy he got from the principal at the beginning of it.
Okay.
That wasn't even like his thing he made. Like I'd always kind of thought maybe he had made that weapon, but he was like, I've been to a lot of screenings and nobody's picked up on this before, but that was actually...
So from the principal's character...
He just happened to have that because he was putting razor blades in all the candy and stuff. The commentary is good. The one I listened to was the one with him, the composer, and I don't remember who else, but a couple other people. But it was a very good little commentary because there's so many layers to this. And they kept pointing out the people in the background, like, okay, if you look right now, here's the robot costume, and they're walking through, and now later on the hot dog that's in this party is being eaten by the wolves, which I noticed that before, but they're like the lady who opened the door, she's also a werewolf, and you see her later on at the werewolf kind of bonfire and stuff. So the commentary, as many like lines that are drawn when you're watching this film on rewatches, like they pointed out stuff I hadn't noticed, and I've seen this film quite a bit.
When too, like the when Sam uses the razor blade candy bar on Brian Cox's character, it looked to have like a Pet Cemetery homage.
Yes, yeah,
and just reminiscent of that scene. So it's a movie that when I watched this for the first time, it's like, oh, this is obviously from a director that really understands the holiday of Halloween. And really understands, Halloween and horror films.
And doesn't just want to do something, just doesn't want to do a rehash of something that they like on a basic level. You know what I mean? Like
it's not an homage fest.
He's very, listening to the commentary too, he is very deep in knowledge of film history and films. And he was like talking about like, oh, this is kind of homage to that. Or I did this shot exactly like The Changeling when the gumdrops like falling down the stairs. And it was like all these little touches, and not that it was a huge thing that the audience members might notice, but the fact that he knows exactly the execution he wants, and he has a very specific vision too. It's just like such a well done film. And something else in the commentary, and you talked about how it feels like Halloween, and it does. They said it was raining through almost all of this shoot because they started shooting in November. And all the bags of leaves they had got from like different parks they had been getting like over, I guess, the fall. And they said that actually like the houses and stuff, like when when certain people were going up to houses to trick or treat, or I think the couple in the beginning, they said it was like raining really hard. They had tarps over the entire thing. They said so water was just like gathering, and they was like, if that would have fallen, it would probably crushed the actors. Apparently it was like horrible and very cold and everything like that, but they worked so hard, and you would never know that. Like it feels like they shot this in mid-October, or or at Halloween, and all on one night, and it's just like the execution is so well done on this.
Yeah, you don't really see too many seams.
No, not at all.
And like I said, the key thing that it does is the anthology to me that kind of differentiates it from a lot of the stuff like Tales of Halloween. Even though they're loosely connected stories, or something like Holidays. Like this is a coherent movie that tells a plot. It just tells it in sections that's slightly out of order. So to me that is effective. It makes it a coherent package. Because sometimes, like with horror anthologies, it's like, oh, I really don't want to watch the entire thing. I really only want to watch this one segment from VHS 1 and VHS 2. Or, from Tales of Halloween or Holidays. Like, in my opinion, Holidays has one good segment, so I might want to watch that. As opposed to this movie, I want to watch the entire movie from beginning to end. So I think that's like a key differentiator between a lot of those anthologies that come out in, recent years. And two, it's no surprise that the director, Michael Daugherty, also did Krampus, which tackles the Krampus legend, which is just the Christmas traditions, and tackles kind of like the dark side of those elements. So, a very effective filmmaker when it comes to evoking holidays and taking advantage of urban, the folklore and legends around it.
I was thinking about that earlier when we were talking about, it having trouble in theaters getting released by the studio, and I was thinking, like, I wonder if the success of this on DVD gave them the confidence to put Krampus out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and that push, because it is a very much the similar type of film.
Yeah, like there's not straight out, like, there are some moments, like with David Koechner's character in Krampus that are kind of funny, but the movie is not a straight up, like, oh, here's your cue to laugh. It's more of like the absurdity of the situation is comedic. And it's
almost, I feel like it's almost, on some levels, a harder sell than this movie would be.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of absurd and goofy, but also plays it straight as well, but it kind of knows what it is,
I think with like the Krampus, you'd be like, oh, it's like a Gremlins for this generation.
Yes.
Because people kind of can gravitate to that because that was a big success. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much credibility that gains with younger viewers today, but with Trick or Treat, it's the horror comedies. You can point to hardcore fans. I'm like, oh, so if you loved Evil Dead 2 and you loved Creep Show and you love this and you love that, here's a movie for you.
And we already know you love Halloween. Yeah. So, I'm not the film, but the holiday, you know what I mean? So it's like,
so everybody loves it to the hardcore, but to sell this to the mainstream audiences, which is why I don't think it got a theatrical release. But, you said there's a lot of push and pull at the studio and, losing people in test screenings. I'm just glad that the movie exists and it came out in the way it did. And it eventually got released in some way or, form or fashion, because it's got enough of a fan base and Michael Daugherty's, profile's increased enough that hopefully if he wants to make a sequel, he'll have the cachet to do it.
Yeah. And
if it's not through a traditional studio theatrical release, somebody like Netflix or Hulu or Amazon or, one of those services, if, they don't want to produce it and release it theatrically like a normal film, that those studios know, okay, there's a certain amount of desire for this content. Yeah. Here's, a moderate, respectable, decent budget. Make your film, and then it'll draw in the fans.
And nobody pirate it, please.
Yes.
I think I read an article from about a year ago, or maybe more. And he said Lionsgate wants to do it. They're just trying to figure it out or whatever.
Yeah.
But he talked about how this very much tackles the Halloween, what it feels like in kind of the suburbs.
Yeah.
And another thing too about it, a lot of those anthology films, they just seem to like come up with a story and just do it. This almost has like each one, again, just has like a little thematic spin on the spirit of Halloween, or a creepy story that kind of feels like a Halloween tale that you would tell or something like that. Like they all feel very, very important and not just throwaway to the whole story and kind of what's going on. So I mean, that was a very hard thing to do, and all the connections. Like I think it's a very well written film, but his other one may tackle like what it's like to have Halloween in the city, or something like that. And I think he said even maybe it won't be stuck to one timeline. So you could have Sam,
over
in the 50s or 40s or something like that, which would be very cool.
Interesting.
Yeah,
because I think you could do a very good parallel about Halloween. Even when our youth, our younger years, like the 90s, compared to today, when there's a lot less of door-to-door trick-or-treating. There's a lot more trunk-or-treats where you go to like a standard location, or like churches or schools or shopping. Well, the shopping centers have kind of gone away, because when I was a kid I went to some of those too, in addition to neighborhood trick-or-treating. you would go to a shopping center that had 30 stores, and each store was giving away candy. So you walked like a mile to do all of it, and you visited multiple stores, and that was in addition to doing your neighborhood trick-or-treats. But now it seems like there's a lot less kids who trick-or-treat in the neighborhoods each year, which is ironic that it's actually safer, I think now, statistically, than it was during our younger years or 20 years ago or 30 years ago. It's just the social media and 24-hour news cycle has made it so that anything that happens whatsoever is so publicized, as opposed to 30 years ago, there was stuff happening that people just didn't know about. So I think that to do a trick-or-treat that could even address, have one, have a segment set in the 80s or the 90s or the 70s or the 60s, and then have one set today. And show the kind of stark difference that happens in a lot of areas between those holidays.
Which really, too, if you think about Trick or Treat, also has a segment that's set, prior to when Brian Cox is younger, since he's that school bus driver, Like, that actually does tackle a little bit, not a lot, but also, too, the taboos about maybe people with mental illness or whatever. Since all those characters were, and actually those characters were played by people that had like deformities or something. He said like even burns or whatever. So they were all really awesome and really fun to work with as well. But that is something that kind of tackled a little bit. It wasn't outright like in your face, but obviously that is something that the perspective has changed. It shows that instead of people seeing anyone that's differently abled as a burden, and it showed that they got the comeuppance, or at least Brian Cox's character did it. Like maybe they went back and killed all the parents too, if they still were alive. But that's an interesting thing to think about. And it's just, I would like to see where they could go in the future, like show Halloween in the 70s or 80s versus the 2000s and the 2010s and things like that. Because even when I was a kid, my parents would take my brother and I, and sometimes like one of our friends, like around our neighborhood and go out and spend the entire night trick-or-treating. And I think in the generations before, like when my dad was a kid, they would just go out on their own from a pretty young age and go out and do the trick-or-treating. Now, I think there was a certain age where I was able to go with just friends. I think I probably went out with friends because I had an older friend that was like maybe a year or two older than me. And I always went to my grandma's neighborhood because it was the best one. I think when I was like 5th grade, because he was like a little bit older. And maybe like 4th or 5th grade, I started going out on my own. And then, of course, I stretched it out to like 7th or 8th. And then by that time, people were starting to be like, all right, you're like in 8th grade now. Like, do you really need to go trick-or-treating?
Well, too, so Derek was, 4.5 years younger than me. So you don't necessarily want, a 10-year-old taking a 6-year-old out because that doesn't have that has bad idea written all over it. So, but I did go with like just friends a few times. But once you get to a certain age, it's kind of
you probably had to go with your brother all the time. So it was like, you were a little chained to your parents probably more than you would have been if Derek wouldn't have been so young.
Yeah, I mean, it was always fun. I mean, and two, you look back at those memories fondly, trick or treat.
With your family.
As opposed to like now, like I have a house and my neighborhood only has like 5 or 6 houses on it, and then like a school at the end. So there's not that many houses, and the other side there's like a parking lot and like an entertainment hall. So there's not a ton of trick or treaters that come through my neighborhood.
Not a lot at my house either. I always want there to be, but I always feel bad leaving on Halloween too, going to somebody else's house because I'm like, the kids that do come, like I want to reward them for going out and trick or treating. But there's not a lot of but I live on kind of a main street, like not back in you don't live in a neighborhood, you live like on an off street of Bardstown Road. And then I also live on an off street of Bardstown Road that is like a main street to a bunch of neighborhoods, so I don't have a ton of mine too, but I always love, like I wish I had like tons of trick-or-treaters. Just because I can't do it anymore. But now that I've got a daughter, like I'm already excited for like here in a couple of years when she's actually like wanting to go. I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, I think too in a lot of areas there's like certain neighborhoods that are really good for trick-or-treating, so people drive to other neighborhoods and go there, which is makes sense if there's neighborhoods where they know they expect it. Because like around where I live, I've gone like on Halloween day, I've gone for walks and stuff and saw the trick-or-treaters going around. But a lot of times too, it's like younger kids and they try to get done before it gets dark, which is interesting.
We have Crescent Hill too, that is like a huge strip in our town that everybody there goes all out on Halloween decorations, and it's just like the most elaborate and expensive decorations because it's a nice part of the town. It's not like super giant houses, but the houses cost a lot of money because of the location. So these people, I think, got a little bit of money to throw around, but it's just tradition that everybody on this street just puts up these massive decorations. And I know a lot of people go trick-or-treating there because they give out like awesome, like full-size candy bars and all that too, but it's always packed. But when I worked in the news station, there would always be a news story at Halloween, like, okay, go down to Crescent Hill and get people trick-or-treating because that's the best visual place. And, you know, there's tons of people to talk to and stuff like that. But there's still pockets of places that are great for trick-or-treating, like people used to do. But, it's a shame that things change as time goes on, but that's the nature of it.
I think everybody, too, looks back and like, oh, my childhood, it was better. Yeah. And I'm sure there are kids now who look back, 20 years from now and be like, oh, when I was a kid, it was better. But, back to the movie, I think, kind of wrapping up thoughts on it, like, Trick or Treat is a great movie to watch for the month of October. And it's one of those movies, like we always talk about sometimes, being like, could you show this to non-horror fans and they enjoy it? I think non-horror fans that are just, casually interested in watching a scary movie or a, horror-themed movie or a Halloween-themed movie during the month of October, I think this is a good movie to show. Because I've shown this to different groups over the years, and generally they enjoyed it, unless people are just drinking and not paying attention. Mm-hmm. But generally everybody kind of enjoys it. So I think this is a good movie you could show to kind of just casual viewers of horror.
I was watching, my parents came over to see, our new daughter, and I had the special features on, and I guess there's a segment that Brian Cox actually directed and narrates about kind of Halloween and like kind of some of the, I don't know, legends, but the history of it and stuff, but also is like all behind the scenes footage of the film as well. Yeah. I wasn't really paying attention to see exactly what it was about because they were over talking and everything, but I just had that on. My mom was seeing some of the behind the scenes and scenes of the film, and she was like, oh, well, we need to get out here so I can watch this. This looks really good. I don't know what this is. And all it was a documentary on like Halloween and the making of the film and stuff. And my mom was already interested in the film. So it's like, and she's not like a giant horror fan or anything. But yeah, you can tell looking at it, just the feel of the film, probably evokes the childhood memories of a lot of people. Yeah. And that alone, I think, has like widespread appeal. And that's why this film is so awesome. It makes me wonder if if a sequel, if they did tackle a different setting, granted there's plenty of people that, grew up with it, doing it in cities and trick-or-treating at apartment doors and stuff like that, that will appeal to a different group. Yeah. As we know from voting maps, even though the cities are maybe like a small little portion, population density wise, they do account for just like the same amount of people that the rest of the nation does. So there is a large audience for that. Like,
where I'm at in Louisville, I've lived in different areas where I lived in kind of densely populated areas that were in like neighborhoods that had a lot of houses. And I've lived in apartment buildings, and now I have like a home that's like on an offshoot. And like when I was a kid, we lived in a neighborhood versus kind of off a main road. Mm-hmm. But going to Chicago and like all the kind of layouts there being different, the area we stayed at was kind of close to like the Lincoln Park area. So there's a lot of like condos or apartment buildings that are like just like multi-level with like multiple apartments. But I would be interested to see what the trick-or-treating in that area is like. Because a lot of those had like gated fronts and some of them didn't. But in a lot of those, the front doors are just the landings to a multiple apartment building. So I'd be interested to see how that works. But I think a sequel that tackles kind of like the in the city stuff and more of the suburban stuff, kind of shows a mix, and you can show, just with slight story changes or types of stories you would tell in those locations, speak a little bit about how the experience is in those two different locations.
If anybody could pull it off, I think it's him, just because he nailed this one. So, and he said the reason he brought that up is because he said, I've lived, of course I had that experience, but I've also lived in different cities, working in the industry of Hollywood. He's like, I lived in LA and all these different cities, and I've experienced to see how different Halloween is there too. So he has a personal touchstone experience, and he's not just drawing on what he's heard or what he's inferring from anything. So
So if we had to get the score out of 10, I'm gonna go pretty high on it. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, to me, just overall enjoyment factor is like a 9. And it's just like, during the month of October, it's a 9. During the rest of the year, maybe it's like a 7 or 8. But during the month of October, it's like an ultimate movie to kind of get me in the mood for October. And then like I want to go to Target and look around because I know they have like new Universal Monster horror decorations and stuff, or Halloween decorations. I went and looked at some of those. So it just kind of got me in the mood to go back out and get into Halloween in October things.
Yeah, I give it a 9 too. When I first watched it, I probably would give it like, maybe a high 8. Like I said, the first time I watched it. Yeah. And now the more I watch it, one, there's more to appreciate on rewatches as well. But two, just kind of it's one of those films that has became ingrained in me, and there hasn't been a lot of films like that in adulthood that have. That I've kind of latched onto, like I did, like you do films when you're a kid.
Yeah.
You seem to rewatch things a lot more when you're a kid, or maybe you just latch onto it. At least I do. But this film has been a film that I've started to latch onto, just like a lot of the films I watched when I was younger. So, and there's not many that have been like that. That gives the same sort of feeling, and maybe it is just like a comfort, nostalgia feeling. But yeah, just on a technical level, and just grading it just. Not from any personal touchstone. It's a really well written film, really tight, and just like a fun watch every time, I think. And it doesn't get old, but also I don't watch it, multiple times throughout the year as well.
Yeah.
It does help that I watch it maybe a couple times a year, and that's it.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's one of those movies I watch like during October. After discussing this, I want to go back and watch it again before the end of October. Yeah. But so. I think that wraps up our review of Trick or Treat.
Blade Runner next week.
Yeah, Blade Runner 2049. I've already got tickets reserved, so I'm looking forward to that. Been hearing a lot of good things, but try to check the expectations and hype. But other things you can do, since this will be out after our short film, after the slasher got released, you can go check that out if you haven't already. It's on our YouTube channel. You can watch it there. It's about, I think on the YouTube version, it's like 4.5 minutes.
So if you've listened this far...
Yeah, if you listen this far, go ahead and check it out. It's basically just the idea behind it is, what would the morning after a slasher film look like when police actually investigate what happened? So that's the basic premise for the short film.
We almost got Jamie Lee Curtis for it. Yeah, you almost nailed her, but... You got Julie's sister. You got Julie's sister.
No, yeah. So Julie's in it, and her sister's in it. Her first time doing on-screen acting. She's been in different theatrical stuff.
And she doesn't have an acting page, right? I was about to say what's her name, but I don't know if she wants.
Yeah,
whatever
she just has a personal profile or whatever. But as for right now, she just has her personal profile. Julie's sister Vanessa, but she's in the short film. Julie's in it. Then Ryan is in it as well. That was kind of the cast, and we shot it we shot 95% of it in one day, with the crew just being you, Chad, and I. And then there's two separate days I got a pickup shot with my Osmo Steadicam thing. And then there was another day I got some handheld footage for like a flashback scene.
Oh, yeah.
That I shot with my parents and with Julie's assistant. So that's, about as low budget you can get. It was, the budget was just food for everybody and like a few props. So you can check that out. Then we'll have the other short film Plucked coming out sometime soon as well.
Yep, and then revisions on that. Chad directed that. You directed After Slasher. Chad directed Plucked.
Yes.
I've done a couple editing revisions. These came over.
Yeah. Making
some more tweaks, trying to get some music clearance for some of the things and sound clearance to use some sound effects and stuff like that. But basically the edit is mostly locked. Now it's just kind of the sound, the sound design and tweaks like that, because it's obviously it's really important on your film is kind of about kind of a little bit humorous about what happens after this. His is more like mood setting rather than like heavy plot or anything like that, or being meta or anything like that. So his is very much important that we kind of get that stuff right, because that's kind of what it leans on.
Building tension or building, as opposed to after the slasher
atmosphere from his. Yeah.
There's music at the beginning and end, and then in between it's all dialogue with some sound effects. I did record some Foley and stuff on my own. And use some other licensed sound effects, things like that. But it's at least we'll have 2 short films coming out during the month of October, because After the Slasher did not get into some of the film fest we submitted it to, which I'm not sure if if we make more shorts, how much I want to be involved with film fest, because it just seems like money are plunking down for at best to get eyeballs on it at a screening in some other city. Versus if I had just taken that exact same amount of money and just put it in Facebook ads or
made another short with
it, or spend it on props or things like that. So I'm unsure, that the film fest. It seems like for features it's useful, because people actually give a shit about features and will possibly acquire them for distribution or things like that. As opposed to shorts, like maybe you get a blurb and like Bloody Disgusting's coverage of one of these big festivals or Dread Central or some of these other horror sites or iHorror, whoever. But then like, as opposed to, I'd rather just have them share it directly on its own, not lumped in with 30 other things. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that'll happen and somebody will like what we've done here. But I mean, who knows? But you can check out After the Slasher now. Plugged will be coming soon. If you're listening to the podcast during iTunes, you can leave us a review that helps other people find the podcast, which is very useful. We always enjoy the comments we see when people watch it via YouTube, so keep those coming because we enjoy seeing them. Even if we don't respond to every single one, we do read them. Just sometimes, you know, Sean has a kid now, a young child, infant, and, you know, I'm at work and you have a full-time job that's, you know, 40 hours a week. Sometimes I'll see a comment and then kind of forget to respond to it and then wait too late.
Yeah, so thanks again for the comments about congratulations to me, you know, my wife on the kids and all that stuff. Appreciate that. Yeah, as well. Like, I see them, like, I need to respond to that. And then, you know, just like anything else, people comment on your personal Facebook page, like, I need to respond to that. And then you just forget. Yeah,
but we do see all the comments, and we did have a huge influx of comments for a while because of our Twin Peaks video series, where there's a bunch of people commenting. So like the app would have like 100 notifications by the end of the week.
Yeah.
But but we do read everything. You'd always send us an email too at at podcast
at housebythevideostore.com.
Email us at podcast@housebythevideostore.com. If you ever have questions, comments, suggestions, we'll check those out. You can find all the work we're doing at housebythevideostore.com. The site recently got redesigned, so if you haven't checked it out in a while, go give it a look.
We got a new logo. We've had it for a little bit, but just now launched it. So this one is now retired. This is our retro logo now. Yeah, so you can see the new logo across all of our social media profiles and at housebythevideostore.com. Then you can find all those links to our social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all that. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. That's where there's pictures of that Stranger Things pop-up bar. And if you want to find us on the internet specifically, you can find me on Twitter at Will_Droid. And I'm at BlevinSean.
And that will bring this episode of the House by Video Store podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.